Hey there, what is going on you guys, and welcome to my personal build log update. So without further ado, I think let's just start this video log. So at the heart of this rig is an Intel Core i7 47790K, which offers a 4 GHz base clock and a 4.4 GHz boost clock. So you may ask, what is the difference between a 4790K and a 4770K? First is the theme. So they changed the theme on the 4770K on the 4790K, and they called it the next generation polymer thermal interface material, or NGPTIM for short. Well, it's not really that short, but anyway. This does give the 4790K the refresh the 4770K need. So when I mean refreshes, mean like their naming scheme, Haswell refresh. So well, anyway, never mind that. With the new thermal interface, this does fix the problem on the 4770K, which runs seemingly hot and unstable. To cope up with the instability, they added a new additional capacitors to smooth the power delivery to the die. So you do not get that, let's say, those temperature spikes every now and then on the 477K. That is completely gone on the 4790K. And thus gives us a much better overclockability on the CPU and a much colder CPU. So cooling the i7 4790K is a Viper V8 GTS. It has a horizontal vapor chamber at its base, a triple tower aluminum heatsink, and the 8 high performance heat pipes. Wow. But it does have a not so astonishing ability to handle the thermal loads of the 250 watt. Given that it is a $100 cooler, it's the least we should expect. But the only problem I have with the Viper GTS is the installation. Without specialized tools like extendable wrenches and stuff, it could be quite difficult on the hands of novice, especially with those guys with the big hands. You know, I have a slinky hand, so slimmer hands, not slinky. My hands don't slink. You actually have a easier time installing it, especially with those motherboards with massive VRM heatsinks like I do. I do have a Z87 motherboard, and those heatsinks are a pain in the ass when installing the V8 GTS. But aside from that, I have no complaint. With its dual 140mm fans, it does keep up a good job in handling my i7 4790K. So we'll see more on that later when we get to the benchmarking tools. So powering it up on the bench is the Asus Z87 motherboard Deluxe. So I wanted to have a Maximus 7 Hero, but when I saw the input or output panel, I was a bit diminished on the Maximus 7 Hero, so it's not really what I was looking for. So I went with the Asus Z87 Deluxe with its massive number of USB ports. It's really massive, I'm telling you guys. It has 4 USB 3.0 or 2.0 ports controlled by the Intel controller, 8 USB, I'm talking 8 USB 2.0 or 1.1 ports, 4 at the rear I/O panel, and 4 at the midboards, somewhere there on the bottom. Bottom. So which I really needed. So with the massive peripherals I have, I almost forgot, it also have 4 USB 3.0 ports handled by the ASMedia USB 3.2 controller right below the Intel controller. So, but hold on. Yeah, you may ask, I do have front panel USB ports. Yeah, basically you're right. But let's face it, nobody wants to have cables running from their keyboard, their mic, their webcam, or even their controller hanging up from the front of the chassis. Do you want that? But let's face it, you don't want that. Well, if you're that kind of guy, you know, as long as it works, who cares how it looks? Yeah, suit yourself. I don't really give that much of a care. So for the memory, I chose 2 sets of Kingston HyperX Fury 1866 MHz 16GB 2x8GB. So I basically have 4 of it. So that gives me a total of 32GB memory available. So on gaming, you don't really notice that much difference with the speed of the RAM. Higher clock speeds of RAM often sacrifice latency, and thus the performance is not that much noticeable on gaming. But on the rendering side, it does, and it can speed up rendering times a lot more. But 866 MHz is more than enough for what I need, given that I mostly sleep during the time when my video does render. So for the graphics card, I took two cards. I have a 1GB Geforce GTX G1 Gaming, and another one is the EVGA GTX 970 SSC. So why two different both cards? Well, first, the Gigabyte G1 Gaming does offer a base clock of 1176 and a boost clock of a 1329. As for the EVGA, it gives off a much higher boost clock of 1190 of a base clock and a boost clock of 1342 MHz, which, as you may have noticed, a bit higher, as I said, than the Gigabyte GTX 970 G1. So why am I using two GTX 970 rather than a single GTX 980? Let's face it, two GTX 970s does outperform a single 980 card, and with the same cost. And the only con of this is that some games doesn't really bode well during SLI, but most does. Like 80% or something. I haven't really done the math because there's tons of gain and I don't have every single one of them, but two 970 does perform better than a 980 somehow. And let's face it, two cards does look badass on your case. Who doesn't want two cards on their case? It does looks beautiful, doesn't it? So yeah, powering everything is a Cooler Master Silent M2 Pro right about there. No, those are the two of the cards. So as you can see, it does look badass. The wind force is sagging quite a bit, but I have already fixed that. This is an older picture. So yeah, powering everything is this. A Cooler Master Silent M2 Pro 850 watt 80 plus silver semi-modular power supply. And it is a pretty good power supply if I do say so myself. It does a good job of powering everything. With its massive single 12-volt rail, it reduces my cables I need to run inside my case. As you can see right here, there's only like three of the modular ports inserted, two for the video card and one for the LED lights that I run around the case. So yeah, instead of having two cables of 8-pin or 6-pin power connectors, I only need one of them to those cables with the Y splitter. Yeah, those. I only need one of those to connect each of my graphics card. So housing all of this is a Corsair C70, which I love and I adore. For $150, it does offer a really good cooling options. This does have a dual 140mm radiator on the top and dual 120mm radiator support at the top as well. Another 120mm radiator mount at the back. It has a total of 11 fan mounts. Two 120 or 140mm at the top, single 120mm at the back, two 120 or 140mm at the bottom, two 120 or 140mm at the sides, and four at the front. So four of those are two between the front panel and hard drive cage, and two between the actual graphics card and the hard drive cage, which you can set up in a pull push. So it does help running the cooler. Running the rig itself run much cooler with about a fraction of a second to a complete air change, especially during intensive gaming. That is really nice to have. So that is enough talk all about stuff. So let's see, how does it actually perform? So starting with the CPU and its cooler, as you can see right here on this screenshot, the cooler, sorry about that. The V8 GTS thus keeps a good job cooling the 4790K. At idle, it has a minimum CPU temperature of 27, 26, 25, and 28. And even during Prime 95 blend testing, it does keep the temperature below 60 degrees Celsius, which is actually quite good. Remember, this is not a stock core voltage. I overclocked this myself. So maxing out only at 59 at the hottest core, so it is overclocked to 4.5 GHz, just a tad bit or above the boost clock, but given that every single core is running at 4.5 GHz. Remember, when they said turbo boost, so it might be 2 or 3 cores, so 2 cores might run on 4 GHz, one at 4.2 and the other one at 4.4. It depends really on the silicon library. But on this overclock, I am running every single core at 4.5 GHz at 1.25 volts. I can push it around 4.7, but it really becomes unstable. Even at the voltage of 1.325 volts, I don't want to push it that hard given that I am being on air cooled, but still. Below 60 on 1.25 volts on an air cooler is just really great, I'm telling you. So it's not that great of a cooler, it really can't handle higher than 1.325. It just brings my core up to 80. But given that it's an air cooler running this time, I just managed. So I settled with the slower clock speed of 4.5, but it's still stable. What's the use of having a unstable overclock if your PC just keep getting BSOD? So I just run Cinebench just for the heck of it. So I just got an 886 Cinebench course. As for the graphics card, this is what I really had fun when I was overclocking my graphics card. So for the graphics card, I overclocked the Gigabyte GTX 970 to a plus 150 MHz on the core and 250 MHz on the clock. On the clock of the memory, and up the voltage only by 0.25 millivolts, plus 25 millivolts, not 0.25. There's no such thing. And for the EVGA GTX 970 SSC, I have overclocked the core up to 130 MHz on the core and 230 on the memory. Remember, the EVGA SSC does have a much higher base clock and boost clock than the Gigabyte GTX G1 Gaming. So I have to level down the boost or the overclock on the second card so it could run at the same, give or take 10 megahertz on the clocks, even if they are different brands. So how do they work? They work pretty darn good. So this is my score during my value benchmarking. I had a score of 4,476, average FPS of 107, a maximum of 190 and a minimum of 17.9. And it's doing all that while staying quiet. Noticeable fan noise can be heard and no coil one as well. The maximum temperatures on the cards are 74 on the Gigabyte and 65 on the EVGA SSC. And it's pretty low, given that the fans aren't spinning that fast. And as you can see here, the fan speed on the Gigabyte GTX G1 Gaming, which is on the left side of the screen, is only spinning at around 44%, while the EVGA SSC is only spinning around 35. So it's actually quite a really powerful rig. Given that its power draw from the wall is really astonishing. With these two cards, I am only pulling around 600 to 620 watts from the wall, given that I have 11 fans connected, 2 DVD-ROMs, 1 Blu-ray CD drive, 3 hard drives, and 1 SSD. So this rig is the sweet spot for my money, and it gives me every little bit of performance I can squeeze out of for the amount of money I paid. And do take note, I can squeeze more out of this machine. I can overclock it like hell. But I chose not to. I want to keep this rig for a long time, and overclocking, without extreme water cooling setups, you really can't overclock that much. But I think that's about it for the rig. So be sure to check out my channel, click like if you like this video, leave a comment or suggestion down in the comment section below, and subscribe if you want to see more of these tech stuffs and gaming videos I make. So I'll see you around, guys. Thank you for watching.